Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your next speaker. Please put your hands together for Mr. Ivan Mckee.
So thanks for all coming along this afternoon, and thanks for staying on right to the bitter end. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get here. I'm going to talk to you a wee bit about first of all my journey to Yes, why I'm standing here talking to you. My background's in manufacturing. I worked in manufacturing for 30 years, latterly in business for myself, and I've done business all over the world in some interesting countries, including quite a bit of time in different Scandinavian countries, which has been quite illuminating. Because one of the things that's really depressed me about this country ever since I got involved in manufacturing has been the industrialisation of the country. We've gone from 30% of manufacturing, over 1% of our economy, down to not more than 10%, which is a long way from other European countries that have managed to sustain a high level of manufacturing in economies that are much more high wage than ours, and that of itself is a lesson that I'll talk a wee bit more about as we go through. But I'm not a nationalist. I didn't get involved in this campaign until fairly recently, the last year or so. And the reason I got involved was because I had a look at the numbers that sat behind it. Because like you, I'd obviously been led to believe over the years and the decades that Scotland was too small, too wee. We were subsidised from down south. We couldn't afford to do anything. If we were on our own, it would be an economic disaster. And I looked at the data. They would look at a business with Scotland PLC, something that was worth investing in. And what I found really surprised me and led me to getting involved in the campaign, putting my toe in the water. And then before long, I found I was in swimming with the sharks, and it's been entertaining, I'll tell you. And I think affordability is important. We've heard some great stuff from a lot of the speakers today about social inclusion and income distribution and the kind of Scotland we want to see. And I totally subscribe to all of that, as do all of the business people, frankly, that are involved in the campaign. Because a high-wage economy is good for business. It's a difficult sell, trying to sell stuff to people that don't have any money, and any business person will tell you that. So there's not really any conflict there. We want the economy to do well and do well for everybody. And affordability is important, as I said, because outside these walls, there's an awful lot of people who still believe what they've been told over the years, that we can't afford it. And the key to unlocking the success, one of the big keys to unlocking the success of a yes vote in September is making those people aware of the facts that this is a rich country, although unfortunately not yet a wealthy society. And if you look at all the data, and this stuff's all out there now, it's all over YouTube, it's all over various websites. You can get all the facts you need. Scotland's got a higher tax take per person than the UK average, has had since data began back in the early 1980s. Every year we generate more wealth in GDP terms than the UK. It's all there in black and white. We've got a lower deficit than the UK in almost every one of the years, again, looking back right as far back as we've got data for. And there was some interesting, the current data set only goes back to about 1980, but there was some interesting data came to light going back to the early part of the 20th century that said right back then, in the heady days of empire, it was the same story. Scotland was generating a lot more into the coffers of the UK than it was taken out going back. And I think that's absolutely true. And there's one thing that the No campaign always talk about as a reason to stay within the Union, the fact that Scotland gets more public spend per head than the rest of the UK. And that's absolutely true, but you've got to remember that that's more than paid for by the extra wealth we generate in tax. But the real point there that you got to ask and throw back at them is, okay, so Scotland gets more public spending and we spend it on the things that we understand. We more than pay for that, But what happens if there's a no vote? Do you really think voters in the south of England that vote in the next government of whatever colour are going to be happy to continue to let extra spending come to Scotland above and beyond what they receive? And the answer, of course, is no. So this isn't about standing still. This is about whether we go forward and take control of our own economy and the wealth it generates to pay for the services we want to see, or we go back and lose a lot of that with the abolition of the Barnett formula, etc. If you go on the Business for Scotland website, and you'll see them in other places, there's some maps there that show on the one side where the wealth comes from, the GDP per head per part of the UK, and on the other hand where the wealth ends up, where the wealthiest households in the UK are. And it's worth looking at those, and it's worth showing people those, because those maps answer the paradox of why, if on paper Scotland generates wealth and generates tax, why is it that it doesn't look like a rich country when you travel around Scotland? Because for decades the wealth has been flowing south and staying south, and that's what we've got to address with independence. So to summarise that part of it, it's all about, are we too poor? No, we're absolutely not. We're very much capable of standing on our own 2 feet economically and moving forward as a wealthy, independent country. The question then is, why is there so many people, you see them on the television all the time, that want to continue to perpetuate the myth that we're too poor? And I'm afraid it really comes down to one thing, and that's naked self-interest, because there's people ask me about employment prospects in an independent Scotland, and I tell them there'll be, I know how many job losses there'll be at independence. There'll be 59, and that's the Westminster MPs that... that Scotland sends down to Westminster, and that's why you get these characters coming on night after night and telling us that we can't afford it and we shouldn't dare go off on our own. There's a nice wee quote there: "It's hard to get someone to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it." And we'll talk a wee bit about the scare stories that do the rounds, because Project Fear is very much about the scare stories, and you still meet people in Scotland today who are afraid to vote yes because of what they're worried about, because of the disgraceful things that they get told from the No campaign. But before I talk about the current scare stories, I want to just give you a wee quote from 1979, which some of you may remember. 1979, I can just about remember it. Others of you will have absolutely no idea what it is I'm talking about. But of course, in 1979, we had the first referendum on whether or not to set up a Scottish Assembly. And this is a quote from the Daily Express in February 1979, a month before the vote, trying to scare people into voting no. And it says, "How much of Scotland's economy will be left intact if we vote yes on the 1st of March? Will our coal mines go gaily on? Will Ravenscraig or Linwood thrive? Will Bathgate flourish?" And if it wasn't so sad, it'd be funny. But the reality, of course, is scare stories have got a long, long history when it comes to Scottish people making decisions about our future. And of course, all of that industry was destroyed in the 1980s after the Scottish Assembly, for various reasons, wasn't actually set up. And when you look through the scare stories, when you talk about the banks, we couldn't have afforded to bail out the banks, and Alistair Darling, as Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, knows that the way bank bailouts work, it's an international effort based on where the banks do business, not on where their nameplate has to be. In Scotland, as an independent country, even if we hadn't regulated the banks any better than the disaster that he presided over, even if that had happened, we would only have paid in about the same 10% to the bailout of RBS and HBOS that we paid in as part of our tax take as part of the UK anyway. And when they talk about pensions, they've got the cheek to talk about we wouldn't be able to afford pensions in an independent Scotland. Well, first of all, the data shows that they'd be far more affordable in an independent Scotland than they are in the current UK setup. So whatever problems we would have in Scotland would be far, far worse if we're part of the UK. But of course, the UK state pension is nothing to be proud of. It's the second worst in the OECD of the 40 industrialised countries in the world. Only Mexico has got a worse state pension in relation to cost of living than the UK. So when you travel all over Europe and you talk to people, you realise that the British pension is, as I say, is nothing to be proud of, and not something they should be banging on about. And when they talk about borrowing costs, the UK has got one of the highest levels of borrowing costs in the UK, and they talk about Scotland would have higher borrowing costs. The reality is that almost every country in Europe has got lower borrowing costs than the UK, because almost every country in Europe has got lower debt and lower deficits than the UK. And an independent Scotland, as the data shows, would also have lower debt to GDP, lower deficit to GDP than the UK does. So it's all nonsense. And every one of those scare stories that comes up, if you take the time to and look at the data, you'll find that they're built on sand and easily refutable. But it's about more than that. It's about what Scotland could be, and it's about the opportunity that sits in front of us. And to illuminate that, I'll talk a wee bit about a country across the water from us that have done well enough over the last decades, and just a bit of a comparison about what Norway looks like and what Scotland could look like. And it's by way of a wee story about the Prime Minister of Norway that's going for a walk along the fjord one day, as you do, and he picks up the magic lamp and gives it a rub, and the genie pops out. And the genie says to him, I'm here to give you some wishes to make Norway a better country. And the Prime Minister of Norway says, you know, that's kind of hard, because we're just about the richest country in the world. We're one of the happiest countries in the world. We're a fair country. We've got no poverty to speak of. Everybody's got a good standard of living. They've got plenty of leisure time, and they've got money to enjoy it. It's difficult to think of much that would make Norway a better place. And the genie says, well, you'll need to think of something. And he said, the Prime Minister says, well, I can think of a few things. He said, first of all, if you look at our industry, we're based on oil and fisheries and not much else. It would be nice if we had a broader base of industries. For example, we've got a national drink called Aquavit that nobody's ever heard of. We like drinking it, but nobody outside Norway's ever heard of it. It would be great if that was a global brand, and everybody from Singapore to Chicago would pay stupid money to take it off our hands, and we couldn't make enough of this stuff, and we were the only people that were allowed to make it. That'd be a nice wee earner to keep us going into the future. He says, yeah, we can do that for you. He said, we've got a problem with the language. We speak Norwegian. Nobody else speaks Norwegian. It'd be great if Norwegian was a world business language, and everywhere we went in the world, we just had to get off the plane and speak Norwegian. And if we went on holiday, everybody understood us straight away. And airline pilots all over the world had to learn to speak Norwegian as their first language. That'd make life a wee bit easier. He said, we can do that for you as well. He said it would be it'd be good if we were closer to our main markets. At the moment, we have to travel through 2 other countries to get to our main markets in Europe. It'd be great if we had a big landmass of 60 million people just stuck on our southern border, and it would be much easier we could trade with them. And the big world city there of 10 million people that we could go and visit and do business with. We wouldn't want to be ruled by them. You understand? We just want to do business with them, and of course they would all speak Norwegian, and they'd be dying to buy our drink and our energy. And we've got a beautiful country here in Norway, but it's a bit big and a bit difficult to get round. It's a long way from top to bottom. The weather's horrible 3 months of the year. We're at -13. We've got the snow ploughs out, and it's hard going. Putting infrastructure in place is expensive. It'd be great if we had the same natural resources and the same population in a country a quarter the size, and then nice mild winters with not too much snow to worry about. That would make life a bit easier. He said it'd be good if we had a diaspora of tens of millions of people around the world that could trace their ancestry back to Norway, and were in all the main economies in the world and wanted us to succeed and wanted to help us do well in the world. It'd be great if we had 4 of the top 100 universities in the world. It'd be great if we had an industrial heritage going back 150 years, and our engineers and scientists were held in huge regard all around the world, and everywhere we went to do business or talk technology, they held us in high esteem. That would be good, and it'd be good if we had a stronger national brand. If, for example, with a national poet that was celebrated every year in Russia and America, and with a national dress that everybody instantly recognised, that would be good for tourism and good for business. And And of course, the whole point is that if you look at Norway and the No campaign talk about Norway and laugh at us for suggesting that Scotland could dare to aspire to be like Norway, you got to remember in 1970 Norway was poorer than Scotland, and they've been dealt a couple of cards and they've played them very well. But of course, yeah, I mean, if you look at the oil wealth fund, which is embarrassingly large now, but of course the reality is when you sit down with a blank piece of paper and you do a comparison between the advantages we've got and the advantages they've got, and you list all the things, if you could design an independent country in the 21st century and beyond, and what those factors would be in terms of location, language, history, natural resources, population, skills, etc., 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 you're going to come up with something that pretty much looks like Scotland. So the reality is that we can build something pretty special here if we're willing to take the chance. The only bit that's missing is a yes vote in September, and we can move forward from there. And as I say, build something we can all be proud of. Thanks very much.